Hello, this is Pat Jordan. Welcome to my Magnum Opus. More like a 44 Magnum bullet to the head of all modern medicine and alternative medicine with far-reaching implications into homeopathy. This work is the compilation of the genius of Patrick Jordan with the invaluable aid of the little red hens, without whom he would not be able to brag about his synthesis. The data obviously predates the synthesis. However, disjointed data with no continuum to bind it together is how they purposely occult it so that even the most adept can't see the forest because a tree fell on them, having made no noise when it did so. Stealth trees. The singular point of the following work is that all of what we uncovered is obviously connected, yet no one that we know of has synthesized these connections before. Hey, before the 2016 article in Cosmo came out to say that herpes infection of the bowel can cause constipation, did you have any clue as to why most of North America was full of shit? As with all my work, it is not for entertainment. It is not fear porn. It is not hope porn. It is the chronicle of malice aforethought military assaults on the biosphere. Therefore, it is a deposition and an indictment of all of those involved in war crimes. Prior to assembling this data in the most cogent form possible, I took a month off because my brain literally hurt. You can't do this work staring into the ass of Satan every day without it taking a toll. But more than that, what I present to the world obviously has never been done before. Therefore, the burden of making it concise and accessible to all those who don't have a technical background and perhaps not enough storage capacity in their mud pellets to hold the big picture in their heads is very daunting. I brag about a brain the size of the planet, but to be able to synopsize and present material like this in a linear fashion, when I can see the totality of the crime from beginning to end, as if there is such a thing in Continuum, is difficult to say the least. Not only do these points flow in a continuum, but they are also connected like the spokes or a spider web across the span of that circuit. How do you describe a moving cloud from the changing image of it down to the molecular chaos dynamics to someone to whom clouds are a faded memory of the past in an age of chemtrails, including the fact that most people take them for granted and probably only looked at clouds for mere seconds? This topic, singling out just Herpes Verde as a compartmentalized fractal, shows implications so big that you will now get a glimpse of what I call the Medical Manhattan Project Operation Paperclip that has never ended and of which you are a victim. If I do my job right, you will be literally overwhelmed by the scope, power, and cold evil of what you will find. You might feel overwhelmed or even impotent when the totality of it washes over you, but I do promise that knowledge is power, and it is my intent to be the most powerful entity on this planet. Together, we can extinct evil forever. Prepare to view evil. Put your sunglasses on. Allow me to restate something that I've said in print and radio. It's highly disturbing, but its implications are profound. We will focus on Herpes Verde, but I will segue with a quote from a corporate competitor in the world of Viri. The global increase in measles vaccination has resulted in a significant reduction of measles mortality. No one at our level can or will think of vaccines as anything but biological weapons with the express purpose of installing the evil Archon virus and its fellows into our bodies so that it can steer us like zombie parasites steer their pitiful hosts. So since there is no public or personal health potential for these weapons, then just why the hell are they being used and what is their purpose? My position has always been that the introduction of virion to a host is akin to a demonic possession. To expand on the common mythos, it is also akin to something from another dimension, bridging the void between where it was and where it wants to command purchase. With either or both of these analogies in play, we can see that the fucking things don't belong here. Unlike the current meme restructuring alternative medicine thought that viruses are necessary and somehow part of us, my meme is that they are an alien invasion that is incompatible with this biosphere, so they use us as transport vehicles. Therefore, the baby that is vaccinated and dies is evidence that the demon could not command purchase of the pristine body and precious soul. The death, although heartbreaking and tragic, was proof that the monster did not belong here, and the only way to prevent its colonization is to give it no fertile territory to colonize. The antinatalist and nihilistic Gnostics held the view that to procreate was the greatest sin. The cults of Babylon and Carthage held sex magics as the highest form of the dark arts. Those who fail to learn from history repeat it eternally. By breeding, the parents have damned their offspring to what I have irrefutably demonstrated to be hell on earth. I know that most of you will now shut down in order to conjure a hearty hatred of me and my message. However, if you were honest, you would know that I am 100% correct. Either we or the virus does not belong here. Either we or the virus must die. Therefore, if vaccination is a method of installing this demonic legion into human hosts, and if they don't die after that transplantation, then this means that the human survivors are literally carriers of their own doom and that of successive generations for eternity, like the shape of Dante's Inferno being endless circles. The terror that you might feel right now is that we are polluted. We are possessed. We are carriers of evil itself because we didn't have the grace or good fortune to die as a kamikaze committed to take the enemy down with ourselves. I have suffered much stupidity regarding my release of the 1972 WHO memos that Joe Spenner gifted us with. It began with people who were just too fucking stupid to understand what they read, then morphed over many years into the COINTELPRO meme that viruses don't exist. Yet all the way back in 1972, the World Health Organization says that they toggled the immune system off of their test subjects, loaded them up with otherwise lethal viruses. Oh, yeah, viruses don't exist. Then the little buggers ran around like there was nothing wrong, even though every single cell in their bodies were infected. Then they turned the immune system on, and the poor critters melted down like the Wicked Witch of the West. The only argument that the idiot consumers of my material can counter with is that some dumbass European says that viruses don't exist and it's just environmental toxins or emotional upset that causes measles in hundreds of thousands of kids simultaneously. That's one fucking bad hair day for a population that never met each other. Perhaps we can invoke the Yehudi quantum entanglement to explain all of this. Or perhaps you can sit back and well, you won't be able to relax, but take a dose of Jordanization for all of this abject cack that you're surrounded with for an enema of brutal truth. That I have not lost you all at this point in the narrative tells us that there's still a spark of what I call the host, where we know who we are, or at least have a sense of who we want and need to be, so that the evil will not be tolerated. But then that was the function of vaccination by their definition, wasn't it? Tolerance. The global increase in measles vaccination has resulted in a significant reduction of measles mortality. To tolerate the demons is to allow them to coexist without waging constant and lethal war until the last man standing determines who or what survives. In the Cthulhu system, there are no winners. In fact, science has codified the action of bacteriophages, again viruses, as kill the winner. Since you now know how deep and dark this really is, then let me show you what they installed in us with just Herpes Verde. Meet the family. Some notables in this lineup are that herpes occurs naturally in birds, but the best part is that there are vaccines for herpes and other viri that are either misted or shot into birds raised for food. Since animal vaccines are horrors compared to human vaccines because they cause damage to the product, they choose locations like the head, ears, or tails of cattle and the wings of fowl to deliver their foulness. So if you really wanted a good case of herpes, make sure to order extra chicken wings at the sports bar. Ever wonder why they renamed them buffalo wings? Morning Lark, one of our little red hens, has many accomplishments to her credit, including the discovery of nearly 600 proteins in bovine serum used to make vaccines that can provoke autoimmunity to, well, 600 similar proteins in humans. Why would you need to eat a cow or chicken when the bovine herpes is shot right into you? Before Jenner's day and during his reign of terror, they used to do arm-to-arm variolation and then vaccination. This means if Farmer Joe had either syphilis or human herpes simplex or God knows what, then when they scratched that into a perfect new baby, then he or she would get syphilis or herpes or God knows what. Think that still isn't the model today? But why stop at simplex? You can get bovine herpes from a completely different genus of virus, along with the kissing disease from your dog or duck. Don't kiss ducks, or horses, or cats, or pigs, or hey, did you know that there was a human herpes virus 3? Now we're getting to the cool stuff. Names I can't pronounce, therefore I have no idea what they are or where they came from. Did you know that there was a human herpes virus 5? Ever hear of mononucleosis? They call it mono for short, but as we will see, none of this is short. It seems that once you get these motherfuckers, they are with you for life. It appears that there are a lot of monkey viruses in here. Pan is the name for chimps. I'm sure that the witches like Salk and Sabin purposely brewed up a colorful collection of monkey shit viruses. Wait, you didn't know that most of these are primate enteric, meaning shit viruses? So they were injecting you with shit? Murine means mouse, so don't be kissing your mice neither. Although a nice coating of mouse shit wafted into the air while cleaning might be enough to deliver an infectious load. I mean, it worked when the government tested its hantavirus out in mouse vectors in the Southwest. No lip locks with elephants neither. Roseola includes the human herpes virus 6 and 7. Know what diseases they cause? Number 6 causes 6th disease. Number 7 causes 6th disease. I guess someone forgot how to count. Anyone notice that they lost track of human herpes number 4 yet? Here's the real money. I wrote real monkey when I typed this. African green monkeys for those who go deep into vaccine lore. But you really have to love the EBV-like quality of what they shot into us from the monkey shit. EBV, of course, stands for Epstein-Barr, but not to worry, we found the AWOL human herpes 4 virus that is labeled, Epstein-Barr. Could it be that they shot the monkey shit into us and it mutated to become a human adapted virus that then, just like cold sores, got passed on to successive generations as easy as a kiss hello? So that you no longer need the polio shot to get it, but of course it is highly recommended because after all, you would miss out on other things such as the rhesus lymphocytovirus. But then that is the precise focus of this magnum opus, isn't it? Cryptic viruses that live in either the lymphatic tissue or the lymphocytes themselves. Seems to me with just taxonomy alone of things that have been memified to no longer exist, I'm talking about viruses, that we have been able to uncover the provenance and grand scale of this Yehudi pollution of the Goyim genome. But wait just a New York minute, Mr. Planet Brain. This was just the monkey butt stuff. You didn't get into the real scary shit yet. Radenovirus that infects lymphocytes, fibroblasts, epithelial cells, and endothelial cells, often causing tumors. That includes human herpes virus 8, aka Kaposi's sarcoma. Good load of uncreation. Infects lymphocytes? Are they making my argument for me? And Kaposi's sarcoma? That famous cancer that AIDS victims are supposed to get? Was it from AIDS? Or was it from the polio shot full of things like AIDS that are adept at crawling into white blood cells for an amusement park ride? Human herpes virus 8, by the way. Been keeping score? I introduced you to the Herpes Verde family of viruses. But if we go one step higher into the order of Herpes viralis, then we find that there is a different family under that order that kind of brings it all home for y'all. Just so you know, life forms used to be classified as kingdom, phyla, class, order, family, genus, species. But the boys who work on viruses started their taxonomy at order. So they go from the order Herpes viralis past families Herpes Verde to jump to Adenoviride that includes the genus Adenovirus. Not your rhinovirus of common cold fame, but a nasty upper respiratory infection nonetheless. It's a favorite gene therapy delivery weapon. Did I say weapon? Because they always use the word tool. I guess a tool can be used as a weapon, but can a weapon be used as a tool? Like beating your swords into plowshares? Like Edward Teller telling everybody that the H-bombs can be used for underground excavation. Mimiviridae, with the genus Mimivirus, is the Ancanth amoeba polyphaga mimivirus that is the brain-eating amoeba. Could we be getting that from polio vaccines? Sure, this was supposed to have been found in hot springs in Australia and just happened to make its way to multiple states in the United States. But who's to say that this herpes of protozoa didn't come out of some monkey's ass to begin with, like all the rest of Salk and Sabin's secretions? Papilloma Verde. Now here's one of my favorites. Remember, we are not technically in the Herpes Verde family of viruses, where you would think cold sores or sores on your boo-boos, but this is in the realm of Henrietta Lacks and the sores inside of her boo-boo. Papilloma Verde is still in the order of Herpes viralis. So what is that to viral cousins? And what a cousin. It's HPV-18 that created Henrietta Lacks's immortal cancerous cell line that has taken over nearly all research labs, like the creature from the movie Species 2. It is HPV-18 that probably created Tree Man. It's a clear connection between the publicized oncovirus status of the herpes virus with the cousin of herpes, because after all, this is what was harvested from Henrietta's skank cervix and then shot into every man, woman, child, and gender fluid that ever wondered if they were white or black, a man, a woman, or just a cancerous cervix on stilts. Phyco DNA Viridae, including the chlorovirus genus, chlorovirus 1. The stupid virus. Now, my mission is not to fascinate and educate. My team and I are intelligence officers in a war against total annihilation by forces I have already described. No, tell me another scary story, Alex, in Jordanville. So although I will bring you up to speed, I actually expect those dedicated to the work to go, oh yeah, the stupid virus. Makes you wonder why they are pushing chlorella to the supposed awake and aware as a health food, since this particular virus has had its 15 minutes of Warhol fame as being able to gut your mind. Again, herpes of algae. But then when we realize that herpes likes to ride the glial cell circulation when it isn't slumming across borders with its candida coyote, then all this mud pellet melting makes mucho sense, regardless of the family, genus, or species. I often wonder if algae ever say, "Oh honey, I don't want to kiss you. You have a cold sore on your outer membrane." Papilloma Verde, genus Papilloma virus. Simian virus number 40, SV40. Simian virus number 12, also known as reovirus type 1. Baboon polyomavirus. African green monkey polyomavirus. And JC polyomavirus. Here we are, close to the end, and this is the meat that is bleeding red when you cut into it. I will re-emphasize because those who are not versed in biology and taxonomy might not be familiar with the concepts, and although I am here to raise an army, not children, I am here to teach and to be understood. The order Herpes viralis contains the family Herpes Viridae of cold sore and genital sore fame, but it also contains Papilloma Viridae, another well-known cancer-causing viral clan. Who doesn't know simian fucking virus 40? Okay, probably not the way I said it, but does anyone get angry anymore these days when they shoot cancer into you with a polio shot, either by a skank cervix of a black woman or with the 40th out of around 46 traceable viruses? I really don't want to reprise the exhaustive analysis of my book Prion Agenda that covers all of this, but this is when you shuffle the simian viruses that number up to 80 with the simian agents, discard the 4 missing viruses, whatever the hell that means, and adjust for repeats, then 46 is too damn many particles of monkey shit that is being shot into kids and them. We're back to that green monkey again. Thematically, we are investigating the role of cryptic infections by stealth viruses that manifest as named diseases. When someone presents with what is labeled as ALS, they immediately test them for JC virus. What the fuck is that? What is it that they know? As I said, I cover nearly all of this in Prion Agenda, so if you want to know, there's a price on it. Just as they put a price on their planned pollution of the planetary population. But as taxonomy would have it organized, we collectively saved the best for last. Another complaint that I get is some of my videos are too long. There's a reason for that. You can't soundbite the things that take time to develop, and there is nothing worse than breaking up a concept in continuum that must flow together to make sense. If you need a break, then put in some GMO popcorn with fake butter on it, walk the dog, spin the kitty on the carpet, and give it a static shock on the nose, and come back to these diatribes when you are ready, but I can't cut them up. This data is seamless, and if you waited for it, I assume you're still here. Here we go. Pox Verde. Subfamily Cordopox viridae. Avipox virus. Foulpox virus. Genus Capripox virus. Sheeppox virus. Genus Cervidpox virus. Deerpox virus. Genus Orthopox virus. Vaccinia virus. Suipox virus. Genus Swinepox virus. The order Herpes viralis leads us to the family Pox viridae, the subfamily Cordopox viridae. I truncated the list of the genera to make a point. All God's children got the pox. Birds got the pox. Sheep's got the pox. Pigs got the pox. Deer and camels got the pox. Even them crocodiles got the pox. And you already know that peoples got the pox. That what Jenna done scratched in all them children's. Or so the story goes. Variola is smallpox of humans. Jenner invented his own word, variola vaccinae, in an unscientific slur of cow smallpox. You see, there already was cowpox, but he said that, well, if you really want to know the story, get my Crookshank transcriptions. Suffice it to say that smallpox is not vaccinia, but they both fall under the order of Herpes viralis. So I like to slur the notion that Jenner gave everyone a distant cousin of cow herpes. So in keeping with the theme of this video, you tell me what you think can hide inside of your white blood cells. I strive for accuracy in an age when your average argumentative college ass can fact check you on the NSA created wicked peed on us. So while I'm talking about smallpox, I have no lineage to show you because it has been removed from taxonomy because it's said to have been eradicated. I told you I would take you on a guided tour through the depths of evil. Consider this one subtle thing. Stanford did a gene sequence on Jenner's pollution to find it had nothing in common with the very basis for Jenner's theory. Quote, Vaccinia virus is a big mystery in virology. It is not known whether Vaccinia virus is the product of genetic recombination or if it is a species derived from cowpox virus or variola virus by prolonged serial passage, or if it is the living representation of a now extinct virus. This is explainable since Jenner the Insane was poking unknown pus from cow pussies into anyone he could get his lancet into, and it is well known that all microbes share genetic material and mutate. So he hotboxed a mutation inside of his victims. But far beyond that is, how do you then declare a virus eradicated that used to kill up to 30% of the people when officials tell you all day long that herd immunity is not capable unless you poison well past 90% of the school children or the general population to get that mythic herd immunity. Back when smallpox was declared eradicated, it was literally impossible to have vaccinated 10% of the world population. Smallpox disappeared quicker than Osama bin Laden, and he was killed 3 times. So, since variola no longer exists except in storage at the CDC and its sister military base in Russia, did it really go AWOL? Or was it just morphed into something different? Or, in the horror of Jordan being right, were they successful at so integrating the demon of smallpox into people that it has become a part of our genome so that we no longer recognize it or fight against it? People say that I don't get to the point. But how can you when all of this backstory was needed to prepare you for the point? But then, what is the point when all is going around in a circle within Continuum? I have to start you somewhere, so let us begin with my original narration for this video called We've All Got Monocyte Madness. Clickbait. Hey tubers, this is Pat Jordan coming to you from the Grain Ghetto in Illinois. We really do all have mononucleosis and Epstein-Barr and herpes and cytomegalovirus and a legion of other monsters shot into us with the polio pollution. But even that isn't the main topic of this video. Let us get this out of the garden. Andrew Molden was a secret society shill who appeared out of nowhere and swooped down on me and Rebecca Carley in 2008, nearly immediately after I released my serum sickness postulate that was unique in the world. He too was on the serum sickness bandwagon that at first made me and Rebecca think that someone else gets it like we do. But as time passed, he revealed himself to be an infiltrator with controlled opposition tactics. Serum sickness was just another chameleon color to get past our defenses in order to draw us in so that he could disable our message. He personally visited some of the biggest names in the vaccine opposition movement and did things to them that only they should report if they had the courage. He disappeared one of Rebecca Carley's copies of the NATO Immunological Adjuvants and Vaccine books, a work in print that we both considered physical evidence of war crimes. Rebecca and I outed Molden on radio in 2008 and 2009 after we were personally told that his plan was to use a device that he had to monitor children for brain changes as they were being vaccinated. We asked if he had a protocol to reverse that damage, and he said, "Oh, we're working on that." You don't participate in biological warfare to study it and then pretend that you have a treatment, well, sometime, maybe in the future. The fact that he is nearly worshipped by some on the internet after he died mysteriously is repulsive to me. The Illuminati Freemasonic symbology on his original website, that was thicker than gang graffiti under a bridge, was toned down after many complaints and questions. His Order of St. Michael connections, the patron saint of Israel, by the way, and his seemingly endless list of high-level medical credentials eroded all believability in his work or purpose. To us, he seemed a ready-made transition to take my message, unique in the world, upstage it, and remove it from the bulk of alternative media. Occasionally, trolls will insert the corrosive questions like, "Who are you?" and denigrate my work and point out that I have a low view count and subscriptions to my videos. I have been doing this since 2008, so I should be bigger than all of the alternative media stars who spout shit like, "Love your parasite," and "Vaccines aren't bad, there's just too many ungreen ones." But if you hear that popping sound and get hit by that awful smell as you pull your head out of your ass, then you would already know that the CIA controls everything in communication and transportation, and that the internet is a military commnet. And so my virtual anonymity is created by the very ones that probably sent Molden to you. Molden could have been recalled because despite 33 professional degrees after his name, he couldn't compete with a goddamn farm boy. But that's not the point of this video, but it's close. In private conversations with Molden, we were talking about serum sickness, and I told him I was paying special attention to cell-mediated immunity because it was the focus of yet another book in the NATO series. Vaccine Designs, the Role of Cytokine Networks. We were talking about white blood cells, where I had mentioned that I just learned that one of the functions of monocytes was to eat excess cholesterol. If you know my first book, ICD 999, then you will know that cholesterol is neither good nor bad, but rises when there is a blood infection, such as is delivered when someone is vaccinated. Molden cryptically said that I should look deeper into monocytes. Sociopath as he was, he refused to say more or give me any more clues, as if he was holding back on some revelation for his own personal publication. I didn't press the issue, but as you can see, I always held that thought in the forefront of my mind since 2008. And now, for the point of this video. I released the concept of Continuum to the world in 2016. Allergy equals addiction equals immunity equals hypersensitivity equals detoxification. That single concept will open up the world of human biology to you and also reveal all of the lies that you've been told up till now. As I and my researchers were following themes through Continuum, like a jet fighter hunting rabbits with napalm, I fell across a single association that shocked me to my core. As always, I asked my little red hens to gather data for me to confirm or deny a suspicion. But like all other topics here in hell, when you think like the devil, you are usually rewarded with the confirmation that your worst concerns are always true. Before I teach you and the AI how we think and use random associations in order to gather data, some of the data that we gather is intended to defeat the AI. Some time ago, we developed this amusing habit of putting any search term whatsoever with a comma and the word prion. And I will be damned, because I already am, that every single time we did that, we came up with an often shocking association. That's the thing about a nexus and continuum. Everything is connected. So this is how we got to the monocyte madness. If we enter Continuum at the point of one of my consults involving a person who had ALS, or more properly said, was diagnosed with ALS, despite the anti-rejection drugs for a transplant being one possible reason for the neurological degradation, that was more like PML. Progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy is just like ALS in every way, except ALS is supposed to be caused by viruses, and the other is, well, like other diseases, they don't have a bloody clue why, or they're just protecting the vaccines that were actually the start of this decline, along with the anti-rejection drugs. When I do a consult, because I'm not a doctor, I don't have my back to the person while looking at a computer screen, giving them 5 minutes of time and then making them pay the lady on the way out with nothing resolved except for a cryptic squiggle on a prescription pad. When I do a consult, I get the entire history of the person, and I mean from birth to present, with so many personal stories that are relevant to the issue, that this process is what brought you and me and us and them to this point in history. Our friend with the demyelination in the brain had sustained a head injury in midlife. It turns out that the Townsend letter had an article where a genius thinker said that when you compress, cut, or otherwise injure nervous tissue, it can release anything from cell components to cytokines to latent viruses like herpes that can then get into the protected compartments of the nervous tissue, the glial circulation, and or the cerebral spinal fluid. This was revelatory from the point of view of traumatic injury and homeopathy that I will cover by a video, and when I finish my book on homeopathy, that will rewrite the very substance of that practice. What that seed of knowledge did was to get one of our top red hens, Morning Lark, to start strafing those rabbits at Mach speed. Through inspiration, hard work, and the Pasteurian, chance favors a prepared mind, she discovered the word trophic. Neurotrophic means that it favors growing in nerve cells. Lymphotrophic means that it would favor growing in, well, we're getting to that. When you're hunting rabbits and you find that the bunker buster opened up a veritable city beneath the surface with caverns and trails going off in all directions like a fractal Escher drawing, you tend to follow the main theme that interests you. Morning Lark was concerned about to what extent the nervous tissue could be colonized. Interesting word, colon. It seems that everywhere that nerves go, there be herpes. But the nerves go everywhere, so that means that by default that the virus is systemic. Sure, you might have focal outbreaks because it likes to present itself in what Biker Dude called the body's emergency warning system of visible lesions on the lips, above and below, to warn the rest of the world to stay away. But when you consider that from the time of infection with HSV2 to the time that it shows up in the base of the spine takes only a few hours, you can be pretty sure that it didn't just camp at that single location because the utility hookup was free. We're not claiming primacy of data. The fact is that when we input sometimes just two words like constipation, herpes, and come up with instant results, the results were already there. The laboratory work was already out there and published. The genius is in the synthesis of the data. We just don't focus on traumatic injury. We don't just focus on constipation. We don't just focus on the sores on people's lips. Well, it's kind of hard not to, but you know what I mean. So Morning Lark tossed a fragmentary grenade into that particular rabbit warren. His name really was Warren, and blew that concept up completely. Of course, the bowels are innervated. Of course, herpes would travel those nerves. Of course, herpes can so damage the gut with destruction of peristalsis and destruction of tissue that you not only get constipation from lack of nerve stimulation, but also leaky gut from the holes that the virus, that some people now hysterically claim don't exist, burrow through your internal rabbit holes, like our dearly departed Warren the Were-Rabbit. None of this should be surprising. The shill Andrew Wakefield, a different Andrew this time, did demonstrate that measles can set up in the bowels, thus leading to some of the conditions that are labeled the autism spectrum. Funny how Rebecca Carley and her groundbreaking paper demonstrated that measles in the brain got relegated to the invisible range of that spectrum in the alternative media, while Wakefield got elevated to cult status despite his unforgivable weasel that he's not against vaccines. Not against military biological weapons? Really, Andy? Neurotrophic viri include yellow fever, herpes, and measles. Now for the scary part. Because I am a synthesist and I am the central clearinghouse for all that we do as the Little Red Hands, I was hunting my own rabbits with a flamethrower on a Mad Max Land Rover and found mention of the lentivirus being the alternative likely suspect for HIV. Now that's its own Escher fractal in and of itself, but despite the difficulty of what I try to do for you, dear listener and dear viewer, it is really difficult to stay on topic when all topics are happening simultaneously in Continuum. Plus, no matter where you start on the circle, you always come back to the start. This might take a while, so it's always wise to pack a lunch. Don't bother about the meat. Roast rabbit is always on the menu. The thing that spurred my memory like a cocklebur under the saddle was that HIV was an organism that hid in white blood cells. This is the nature of immunodeficiency, whether you believe in viruses or not. There was a PBS Secrets of the Dead episode on the Black Death where they discovered if you lacked certain cell surface antigens, then Yersinia pestis, the bacteria that caused the plague, couldn't get purchased, and so you wouldn't end up buying the farm. We'll visit these lectins at the end of this mess. See what I mean? Herpes, white blood cells, Black Death, cell surface antigens, lectins. Where do you start this narrative? What the researchers in the Secrets of the Dead episode had discovered was that the Delta 6 mutation of these immune cells would also deny HIV access to infect those hosts. So my mind was going, lentivirus infecting white blood cells, herpes white blood cells. So I asked Morning Lark to put in a 2-word search with all the sickness in my stomach that I hate being right all the time. Herpes, monocytes. Ghost of Andrew Molden. It was simple as that to find that, in fact, a monocyte can be infected by herpes to the degree that a gangbanger is now wearing a police uniform. And we wonder why we fucking can't get well. What that did for me was push the notion of HIV as some dread disease into the back burner, just as some stinky cabbage cooking with the rest of the meal. I mean, if you can throw antibiotics at Lyme, take off its cell wall, make it go stealth because the immune system can't see it anymore, so that it can travel the body and go wherever the hell it wants to, then why wouldn't any other virus like herpes be able to do what we had already learned from the Australians? The company that I don't endorse at www.h-clear.com says that the reason why herpes comes out like a Rottweiler, messes things up, and then disappears without a trace is because it didn't disappear without a trace. Co-infection with candida allows herpes to infect the candida, thus allowing it to ride like a city bus wherever the hell it wants to, but the immune system can't see the herpes, so it can't respond to it. Great gig if you can get it. But then, because I am master of Continuum, I then synthesized material that I had compiled for the world in many of my books, but especially Doof of the Dogs and Prion Agenda, that the urban myth that candida causes cancer is an oversimplification, since candida is the troop transport for herpes virus that is recognized as an oncovirus. Well, that requires you to believe in viruses, because some paramilitary shill is shaking people up by saying viruses don't exist as part of an agenda of the Archon virus itself, to hide in plain sight if it can hypnotize people not to see it. Cervical cancer is caused by a virus? Who knew? Yeah, I already covered that in my Henrietta Lacks At Your Cervix video. For those who don't believe in Viri, then explain to me how HSV-18 created a human cervical cancer that is then called a brand new life form. The words "fuck you" to my detractors always comes to mind. One day I was looking up movie titles, because Morning Lark and I actually talk about stuff that isn't vaccine and health related, and I will be damned, no, I really am, if I didn't turn the page from the list of movies that I'd made nearly a decade ago to another page that had a single sentence note with no reference that says measles virus can infect monocytes. I labeled my November 2017 email "The Biggest Idea in Medicine." The case was closed for me that we were fucked. I marvel every day that mankind can stay upright, let alone live. So the criminal was once again in the cop's uniform. This came full circle in Continuum to our opening of the story, that when you have a traumatic injury to nerves, that it can release a shitload of stuff, but you need not have herpes in the nervous tissue of the peripheral nerves, spinal trunks, or the spine or brain itself, because all injury is responded to by an immune response with white blood cells, thus closing that subsidiary circuit of how I created the idiom of Continuum, where allergy equals addiction equals immunity equals hypersensitivity equals detoxification. This is because the cell debris and infectious agents released have to be cleared as a form of detoxification. In fact, the damning catch-22 that actually keeps me up at night and questioning the very meaning of life is that when responded to by the immune system, that very act might be the thing that releases the goddamn viruses like herpes from the very things that show it up there to clean up the mess. Monocytes morph into macrophages and travel the entire body. In martial arts, it is the highest form of fighting to kill your opponent with their own sword. We never had a chance out of the cereal box. But that was until I came around. What I just told you is one of the biggest ideas in medicine, alternative medicine, homeopathy, and the very idea of disease, quote, running in families, as if it were some genetic defect or homeopathic miasm. The goddamn viruses that people are now being induced to deny are living in your janitorial and military cells that are what? What did we learn from the Institute of Immunology at Marburg, Germany in the 1940s? That immunity is memory, that immunity is the host. It is what defines who we are. This means that if there is a ghost in the machine, then we are not only not who we think we are being puppeteered for a purpose that is currently beyond the threshold of our perceptions, let alone our comprehension. But that was until I came around. I learned from a grand master, you can't fight what you can't see. I've shown you things that were out there, like the single breadcrumbs hidden on Earth, the asteroid belt, and Mars, yet I assembled them for you before your very eyes into a fully formed and steaming loaf of bread. If you can't fight what you can't see, I just showed you the enemy. And it's inside of us. Where? Everywhere. Some people like lists. Since I like to do inline references with all of my presentations for immediate continuity during diffuse continuum building, let's deviate from that for just a bit to have a laundry list of where herpes can set up to do damage. We've already seen the intestines. There are many diseases that take the myelin sheath off of nerves. So if measles causes some forms of autism and herpes causes some forms of Alzheimer's, then just what is being etched away and why? I used to think that it was just insulation so that they could splice in their transhuman nanocircuits. It seems that they are dehumanizing us since brain architecture is apparently not what they taught me in pre-med. The root of thought. What do glial cells do? Nearly 90% of brain is composed of glial cells, not neurons. Andrew Koob argues that these overlooked cells might be the source of the imagination. Mood disorders and dysfunctions of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis in multiple sclerosis associated with cerebral inflammation. Autoimmune phenomena may be one of the underlying factors linking depression to multiple sclerosis. The immune phenomena associated with depression may in fact exacerbate multiple sclerosis, or they may be causative mechanisms in both illnesses. Early observations more than 100 years ago of the link between adrenal and thyroid endocrinopathies and psychiatric illness has allowed major advances in our understanding of the biology of depressive disorders. Our discovering of hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis dysregulation in depression has been important in understanding the biology of the disorder and may also yield potential new therapeutic interventions in the form of the corticotrophin releasing hormone antagonists. The Jordan method is to kick ass and not bother taking names. My message since 1978 has been that there is no such thing as psychosomatic, but somatopsycho origin of disease. Consider, if you will, Rod Serling, that the herpes got into your vagus nerve. It lives in your nerves after all. And someone will say, I got stressed and then I got a herpes outbreak. Since 1978, do you know how stupid and absolutely annoying prepositions like that have been to me? There is no such thing as stress. It is an idiotic garbage can word to toss you into the Yehudi bin for head jobs. The invention of the idea of stress gives psychologists or psychiatrists who are nothing but opinion mongers the ability to cover for vaccine damage, then either talk you into submission or drug you into submission for some quick cash. Your adrenals are fucking shot. Does anyone remember the groundbreaking work that I did in my videos on the World Health Organization showing that tuberculosis causes adrenalitis? If you had healthy adrenals and an unhealthy liver, you would bite the head off of anyone attempting to give you stress, turn it around in your mouth, and then spit it back out at them. A healthy response. You wouldn't melt down and then have a cold sore. The love and light nutters would then go all morphogenic field and misquote Candace Pert to say that it was your goddamn emotions that gave you a freaking ulcer on your face. No, dear and gentle viewer, it was the herpes already set up like a street gang in Vegas nerve that ruined your ability to regulate your parasympathetic system. And we are currently investigating veterinary medicine on the adrenaline activation of herpes virus proliferation. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Heart attack, CFS, herpes virus infection, and the vagus nerve. By Gabriela Segura. I came across some very interesting research regarding the vagus nerve and chronic viral infections. This happened almost the exact same day someone very close to me had a heart attack shortly after a herpes virus infection. He is now out of danger and well into recovery, but his words stayed with me. I think the herpes virus got a hold of my vagus nerve, and that is why I had a heart attack. I thought to myself, it's entirely possible. So, no love and light, no pillow sitting, co-creating some fantasy land of thoughts manifesting reality. That is, unless you're so weak at this co-creation that you have a love blossom on your lips, above or below, depending on how deep your love is. That is, unless you really wanted to have an ulcerating lesion on your mouth and part south, so that the manifestation of this contagious love blossom were then really part of your warm and fuzzy thoughts that you're putting out to yourself in the world. After all, nearly all God's children got it by now. So your dream is a near reality. But in my world, things and problems are quite simple. Kill the goddamn bug that seems to have control of your mud pellet too. You have to be 7 ways from stupid to buy into psychosomatic when I have been teaching somatocycle to the world since 2008. And all of the problems that manifest from being parasitized should go away on their own, whether you're stressed or not. See? You see? I'm a raging maniac. 24/7, doing proctology on the devil without a break. So I would have been an oozing ulcer on the linoleum if stress triggered disease. They have it backwards. Never get your information from Yehoods that practice opposite day. And that's the problem to find, isn't it? The Yahudim are the typhoid mare carriers of the Archon virus. Therefore, the New Age meme that viruses don't exist is actually the virus telling its minions to tell the hysterical, hypnotized masses to not pay attention to it because it doesn't exist. Jesus Christ, and they say I'm a nutter. The relationship of MS to physical trauma and psychological stress. Nevertheless, there has recently been a growing interest in the interactions that occur between stress and the immune system, in the influence of the immune system on the distribution of T cell subsets, in the association of a disordered hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and MS, and the possible influence of stress-induced heat shock proteins on the pathogenesis of disease. My reinterpretation of stress is anything that provokes adrenaline. If I had not made myself read this article, then the rabbit strip mine of pathways to induce heat shock protein other than, well, heat, would have never been revealed to me, or us as the red hens. In 4 decades, I have never confronted the possibility of heat shock proteins being activated outside of an infectious, febrile condition. From this point, the little red hens and I feverishly collected hundreds of papers that already crossed the boundaries between mental illness that I've never subscribed to, thus coupling it with clinically demonstrable somatocycle processes, including prion formation, which brings us back to the realm of herpes, implicated in Alzheimer's, a prion disease, and demyelination diseases like ALS. We're pretty deep into this investigation with endless fractal permutations to go, but I really need feedback from the average man and woman and fluid off of the street to know if, after seeing all this laid out for you in a linear fashion, that you see the interconnectivity in a big picture kind of way. I need to know if I have even chipped off the paint on the Berlin Wall of countless generations of Yehudi inculcation that disease is psychosomatic when it has always been somatopsycho. I need to know if Continuum has caught you in its gravity well, because if I fail in this particular lesson, then nothing else will matter. This is the master template. This is the big idea. This is the unholy grail. The tainted blood in the cup that we have all become drunk on, that we now must purge ourselves of if we are to find ourselves and recreate us in our image. Come with me now, and I will be your Virgil to your Dante and give you a guided tour of hell. Have you ever felt sick to your stomach while filling out tax forms? Unless you had MCS, chemical allergies, you would never know that the printing is highly toxic, so it turns your guts into knots. They planned it that way. It doesn't have anything to do with the Deuteronomy directive of invade a race and give them the option of perpetual tribute or death. That does help, but it really is that your guts are knots because the tribute takers poison the papers that they induced you to file on yourselves to fund their military so that they could enslave you. Now, that is something to have your guts tied up in knots about. But what we're looking at is outside and bigger than that. beyond just the somato-psycho relationship of being poisoned by toxic tax forms, is that sick feeling in your guts that you were trained like circus animals to defend was your precious sensitive emotions coming to the surface, was really goddamn herpes embedded in every tissue of your body but showing up as reflux due to autoimmunity. See? Just like the need to extinct the tribute exacting tribes and get them out of the biosphere, your body was trying to eliminate the herpes infected cells at the expense of itself. Autoimmunity. But this is where we're taken all the way back to the 1972 WHO memos that showed when they shut off the immune system, then inoculated the test rats with lethal virus, that they ran around just fine until their immune systems were toggled back on. Then they started attacking their own organs from autoimmunity. Think the rats were under stress and having a bad hair day? My mentor, Mimi, the queen of meme, and I discussed on air the possibility, based on the Malacards, that eosinophilic esophagitis in kids diagnosed with autism who were unable to tolerate eating anything might have been from rubella from the MMR shot. Rubella is not herpes verde, so not in the scope of this limited examination. However, a virus is a virus is a virus, so the concept crosses over. Who needs rubella when you can get herpes from a polio shot, a casual kiss, or from eating chicken wings? But never mind me, I'm just a farm boy. Keep taking your protonics. As promised, follow me deeper into the circles of hell to see that although we focus on order herpes viralis, that herpes is not just for breakfast. There's more on the menu. Because we have seen that measles is also a monocyte marauder, we can add another brain buster that, sure as a flu shot, will give you Parkinson's. Influenza A infection of human monocyte and macrophage subpopulations reveals increased susceptibility associated with cell differentiation. This is the result of the little bastards already in there. Besides vaccines, kissing, and being sneezed on, how else does influenza get in and around? Here's some causes of nerve injuries: laceration, focal contusion like gunshot wounds, stretch and traction injury, compression, drug injection injury, and electrical injury. From the list, it's clear that we need to stop living on Earth in order to avoid getting ill, or in this case, being made ill by medical intervention. Having made it past hell proper, as Dante would tell us, we are now in the deeper circles. So let me tell you how you and I got to this point of becoming aware that we are indeed in hell. One of our own little red hens, the beloved Ms. Magoo, had back pain. It involved muscle tension but also sharp nerve pain. Turns out that ultimately she suffered an entire notebook page list of injuries during her life, but the last straw to break Magoo's back was a compression fracture. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Is that possible in a circle? What I noticed, because I am, after all, a self-declared genius who requires a parking orbit for his brain, is that every time she had severe pain in her thoracic spine, she also had a cold sore that appeared before the incident. Now, the only thing that I knew about herpes simplex 1 back then was that it supposedly rode the glial circulation, so I knew full well that it was a nervous system disease, but I too was lied to and was totally unaware of how it went stealth to avoid immune surveillance and just what the triggers were and why they triggered the beast. 6 years ago, in April 2012, I had made Ms. Magoo a promise that I would figure out what was wrong and we would have a name for what was going on. I often told the story that it took me 30 plus years to discover the name for my disease, typhlitis or chronic appendicitis. Ms. Magoo, being much older than me, said she didn't have 30 years to wait. Little did any of us know, little could any of us know, what a simple inquiry into the relationship with herpes, pain, nerves, and bone reveal. All the previous material covered was generated from the singular investigation into what was going on with Ms. Magoo. These revelations were in harmony with the statistics that nearly everyone has herpes. How couldn't they? They or their parents got the polio shot, either as presenters or latent infection carriers. Therefore, the topic became of interest to the little red hens because the little devil that I used to think was the archon entity affects nearly everyone on the planet. It was because I have had the privilege of working with the finest people this universe has to offer that I modified my view that herpes was the archon entity because some of the best people in the world had it. That meant that either it was not the source of evil in the world, or it truly was, but some folks were intolerant of the infection, and for whatever freak of genetics, was able to keep it at bay so that it didn't turn them evil. Now, you need to know my experience with some of the most heinous people on the planet revealed that all of them not only had bad breath that could turn your stomach from 12 feet away, but also all of them had herpes. This is why I thought that perhaps the soul-jumping monster that is transmitted by penis-sucking moils during circumcision might be the root cause of human evil. No matter how that unravels, I have always been on the hunt for herpes. We can see that people already have it. We can see that it can infect any tissue. Early on into our investigations, we were astounded when Morning Lark uncovered evidence of it leading to degenerative disc disease. That was a spine, bone, and nerve connection for Ms. Magoo. But doesn't this stand on the head all of the practice of chiropractic? It's rare that I find material that I respect for its science, its conclusions, or its speculations. Because data follows the flow of the strange attractor of gravity, Morning Lark came up with this exceptional work that gave us the concept that beyond leaky gut, you could have leaky brain, and where the degradation by herpes was concerned, that led us to the theory of leaky everything. The Townsend Letter, October 2016. Hypothesis: osseous spinal injury and re-injury as a risk factor, biomarker, and etiological factor in sporadic ALS by David A. Steenbach, MSDO. Quote, I found that upon careful questioning of sporadic ALS patients and their families, most recalled a cervical injury that they had dismissed or forgotten. Occasionally, the patient and family could not remember a specific trauma incident, but the patient still had palpable tenderness over the posterior cervical spine overlying the neuroforaminal stenoses as seen on their CT scan. Infrequently, the patients were diagnosed as having a radiculopathy, yet little or no neuroforaminal stenoses will be seen on the CT image. These patients invariably have a palpable, tender spot or spots over the paraspinal process at the location where the nerve is being compressed. These tender areas are believed to be areas of nerve root avulsion or constriction. for some other reason than the bony neuroforaminal stenosis, as is seen in most other patients. While this posited correlation of spinal column injury, and often re-injury in the same area, with SLS onset lies at the heart of my hypothesis and is testable, scientists and physicians who work with ALS will naturally ponder how such bone pathology could trigger this insidious disease process. What I suspect is that spinal column injury and re-injury creates a breach in the blood-spinal fluid barrier that becomes inflamed and admits neurotoxic, misfolded proteins, pro-inflammatory cytokines, activated monocytes, and so on, into the central nervous system. It is anticipated that this process is responsible for the CSF aggregates linked to motor neuron destruction, and that this process may stimulate execution of necroptosis in astrocytes, which is selectively destructive to motor neurons. Interestingly, the descriptions of the neurovascular components of ALS described by Garbuzova, Davis, and Sandberg in 2014 and are, in my opinion, consistent with the spinal motor nerves being recently re-injured and developing a blood-cerebrospinal fluid barrier breach or breaches. One way into blood CSF barrier breaches might be readily and non-invasively revealed is by having phonar upright MRI scans done of SALS patients. This sophisticated scanner was used in one seminal study which linked cranial cervical trauma and resulting pathology in multiple sclerosis patients to dynamically visualize abnormalities in cerebrospinal fluid hydrodynamics, which is hypothesized by the author of the study as to play, quote, an important etiological role in the genesis of multiple sclerosis, unquote. Of significant note here is the reference to the phonar MRI that was developed by the foundational work by Dr. Gilbert Ling. Gilbert told me by phone that we are in the scientific dark ages and there has not been a major technological breakthrough since the medical MRI pioneered by Phonar. That was then co-opted by GE. Truly, if anyone wants to understand the mechanics of life, then abandon everything except the work of Gilbert Ning Ling, who I consider to be the most intelligent man that ever lived. gilbertling.org. Steenblock's work in the Townsend letter outlining previous and forgotten injuries opened our eyes to how the beast gets out of the cage via injury. I had noted that many folks develop severe disease after physical trauma. I knew a fellow who was thrown from a horse, then developed diabetes soon after, with his MD telling him that diabetes was caused by a virus. I hold these kinds of stories in my head for up to 20 years before I can explain them. And explain them I am. The ramifications of such knowledge as you're getting today will revolutionize the notion of miasms in homeopathy. Because I am the proponent of Continuum and Nexus thinking, I did not and could not stop with just Ms. Magoo because of the implications of prior injury leading to neurodegenerative disease, as was also seen in more Little Red Hens called the Biker Gang. Head and neck injury sustained 20 years before evil in the form of whitecoats induced the person to take a flu and pneumonia shot that was the event that led to total decline into what is now argued whether it is ALS or drug-induced PML. How can the one topic of herpes turn on itself like the Ouroboros speaking itself into existence to impact people across the world? Concussions linked to conditions similar to ALS. Study shows repeated head traumas may raise risk of symptoms seen in Lou Gehrig's disease. By the way, that's the Babylonian name change for ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Quote, maybe Lou Gehrig had chronic traumatic encephalopathy, Cantu says. He sustained at least 5 documented concussions during his career. In addition, there are reports that he was knocked unconscious for 5 minutes after being struck in the head with a ball. He also played football at Columbia University before joining the New York Yankees. Unquote. Along with Continuum, I teach caution with the everything you know is fake meme. At some point, folks will weary from the overwhelming flood of fake news, fake science, and fake religion to the point where they will give up and the elders will come in to tell their empty minds what to think. Protocol 5, line 11. We must so direct the education of the Goyim communities that whenever they come upon a matter requiring initiative, they may drop their hands in despairing impotence. Lou Gehrig may not have had Lou Gehrig disease. That's like when me and Granny Annie found out that not everyone that has uric acid off the scale ever gets gout. Here's the slippery slope that buries you in a mudslide if you don't have me to hang on to. Eric Pioro from the Cleveland Clinic says, ALS as we know it may not be a single disease, but a syndrome. Here's the big analysis that should be bringing in the big dough and having fake alternative medicine documentarians begging for my information. ALS as a spectrum like autism? That smells of vaccines. That smells of vaccine-embedded retroviruses. That smells of trauma leading to that immune cascade response that might see the endogenous retroviruses emerging from damaged cells. And here's your money shot, as they say in porn, because ERVs lay dormant until the cell signals that the immune system is low and they emerge. Perhaps the internal surveillance of the cell patency is down after injury, and that signals the ERV to replicate because it will take a while for the white blood cells to mobilize to fix any trauma damage. But by the time they get there, the cell-mediated immune system sees the entire tissue as an infected mess. Thank you, Salk and Sabin. Burn in hell, you Yehudi murderers. So it breaks down the host brain. I will keep referencing the Cosmo article because it was so shocking to find that a mainstream rag would put something so profound out there that the little red hens and the planet the size of a brain were searching for years. It seemed absurd to the point of either a gift or a mock by the AI or its puppets, the Elders of Zion, to have this information available at this point in our investigations and contemporary with our current time. As it is with the nature of investigation, each new clue leads to more evidence, so we kept collecting. Herpes simplex virus type 1 infection of the rat enteric nervous system evokes small bowel neuromuscular abnormalities. Gastroenterology, Volume 138, Issue 5, May 2010, that predates the Cosmo article by 6 years. When Morning Lark discovered this, she wrote, consider that IBS, Crohn's, celiac, and gluten intolerance/sensitivity may all be caused by herpes simplex virus. Given that bovine calf serum most probably is contaminated with bovine herpes virus, what do you think follows? With that as a jumping off point, the data then accelerated under its own accretion to come to an email titled, "You'll love this one," sent in November 2017. Keep in mind the promise I had made to Ms. Magoo to come up with a name for her condition all the way back to April 2012. What Really Killed Elvis by Recto Fossa, August 16th, 2017. Hirschsprung's disease is lack of nerve growth at the end of the colon of a fetus. This leads to constipation that leads to megacolon, aka congenital aganglionic megacolon. The author of this article that gave us a name for Ms. Magoo's condition, as I had promised her 6 years ago, goes on to say, quote, "Enter some very new research which shows that herpes virus infects and kills nerve cells in the colon, thus stopping peristalsis and leading to toxic megacolon." Isn't it interesting how all of these independent investigations crash head-on like the trains in silent movies? Me and the Hens fell into that same new research like the Cosmo article, but found that they had been giving rats the Elvis back in 2010. I'll bet that if you were a data dog and went digging, you could come up with a connection decades before that. Quote, "Despite trawling the interwebs, I can't find a picture of Elvis with a cold sore. But then he was a major heartthrob, so his people would have been careful to make sure he was made up immaculately. But there's loads of footage of him playing tonsil hockey with multiple women in the audience." I never liked Elvis. Ever. There's a revealing series on the internet called "They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll" that has clips of the King of the Jews, he had a Hebrew mother, being the sociopath that he was. I never liked women who shared spit with strangers without a blood test and quarantine before even shaking hands. What I've been trying to teach people is something that is codified in the TV series Brain Dead, that the bugs in people have an imperative to replicate, so they will do anything to accomplish this. It's blatant in zombie parasites that cause the host to exhibit odd, self-destructive behavior. But then, how is that any different from women kissing a strange Jewish boy that they never personally met? His urge to share his disease is apparent in his behavior. So was that an attractant for stupid women who would then go on to be carriers of the Herpes virus? Or were those stupid women also slaves to their parasitic overlords, passing on whatever they had in the Manitoba mosh pit of groin-grinding garter snakes? See my video, Gender Fluidity, if you want a reference for that reference. You have to ask, at least I do, how drop-dead attractive women will lick butts and other things in porn movies and then complain that they have irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, I was extremely stupid in my youth due to poison dew, fluoride in the water, environmental chemical toxicity, did I just repeat myself? And EMF entrainment, and I regret my entire life history here in hell. But at what point are people so oblivious that you can't lick butts or kiss strangers without getting what was in those butts and strangers? I mean, would the women who kissed Elvis and then went on to get megacolon ever suspect that it was their indiscretion that led not only to their demise, but that of everyone they contact with afterwards, even passing it on to their offspring? Sorry, I'm not moralizing here. I'm just trying to understand the mechanism of the brain's off switch. I've always been all about the biology. Quote, "Herpes is very, very common and can be caused by both herpes simplex type 1, HSV1, and herpes simplex type 2, HSV2. HSV1 causes cold sores on the mouth, and some estimates reckon up to 80% of the population carries this virus. However, it's a fallacy to think that HSV1 causes oral herpes and HSV2 causes genital herpes. About 40% of genital herpes is caused by HSV1, and about 20% of sexually active adults have genital herpes caused by HSV2. Most people with herpes will not have symptoms and therefore will not be aware they have it. Indeed, roughly half of people presenting with herpes got it from partners who were unaware they even had it. Unquote. And there you have it. I'm no misogynist. I don't go to church. So I won't beat up on just women when men are sharing their love blisters to the point where, did he say 80% of grape apes have a disease that I just spent a large portion of your life proving in unrefutable terms can ruin every aspect of your life? God Almighty, that doesn't exist. Every day I wonder how humans can even remain upright. We have, in Continuum, come full circle back to an insidious Jordanism, not related to the porn industry, that very attempt to take control over the host without the host knowing about it. Once you arrive at my level, there is no partners who were unaware that they even had it bullshit. Good God, that only exists in people's herpetic minds. If you got a vaccine or kissed someone who did, or was born to someone who either got a vaccine or kissed Elvis, or kissed someone who has, or just ate chicken wings, then you have fucking herpes. Unless you just came in on the Nibiru Express, then there's no way you can't have it. And I'm not so sure about those Niburians. What should scare the holy fuck out of you is that for all the material I have divulged on the ubiquity of herpes and the full-scale assault it can do on any and all tissues of the body, the very thought that at least 80% of the planet has it makes you want to dig an underground base and go into self-quarantine. I already know that I will have pissed off a large portion of women and men, which is frankly one of my highly developed attributes. I can hear the women say, "You act as if the entire human race is a polluted, infected collection of mindless animals, but you neglect the need for human contact and the experience of doing something fun or intimate with someone famous." As stated, I do indeed view the human race as nothing but thumb puppets for the Archon virus. And since I can't quarantine 7 billion grape apes, or all the snails and slugs on this planet, I can do my best to avoid as many as I can. Let me address the famous person thing so that I can deliver the kill shot for the other two. Famous person? He was a military intelligence asset who was a Yahudim serving the Yahudim, therefore the bugs in their heads. So, need for human contact and fun experience? Let's recap these worn tires. Here's what herpes will get you: constipation, megacolon, cold sores, genital sores, transmission of disease to progeny, degenerative disc disease, esophagitis, neuropathy, acting stupid as hell, that's a medical term, depression, fatigue, MS, ALS, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, autoimmunity, and heart attack. You would risk all of that for the contact of a fun experience? Women have to either be 7 ways from stupid or have been driven to that by the bug inside. How can I say that? How can I be so cruel? I'm the author of Eve's Ill, where I say that it will only be a woman or women that can take back this planet and extinct evil. Since I did say that, then it won't be a dizzy bitch trading spit with Elvis for fun. She will be a warrior, not a wannabe. She will be intelligent and wary and responsible for her own well-being and those around her, and those that will follow her. Did anyone notice that Elvis is an anagram for evils? So we just went full circle in several levels of Dante's hell, from Ms. Magoo and her concurrent cold sores followed by intractable nerve pain in her thoracic spine, to an explanation of lifelong constipation, all related to the same causative agent, that also dovetailed with a totally unrelated little red hen family who experienced the combination of traumatic injury followed by vaccination followed by degenerative nerve disease, that although not traced to a viral agent has to have vaccines at its root because the viral filth was shot into the person right before the decline. The fact that they kept looking for JC virus, remember that one? When it never showed on invasive spinal taps, indicates that they knew something had to be at the heart of it, but they never went outside of the box that kept coming up with negative results. This is a ploy in fake science where you can say that there is no evidence of JC virus as the causative agent, but if you weren't looking for any other causative agent that you knew that you put in there, then the statement wasn't false. It just wasn't the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. For those of you who demand references, here's some on epilepsy and melting brain. So you waited, some would say suffered, this long for the payoff. Internet gurus get you all worked up about intractable conditions that they claim they can cure. No, you can't say that. It's illegal. That they can reverse. Yeah, that's a good word. It's meaningless. Internet gurus go on and on about epigenetics as if they understand it. But if you pulled their thumbs out of their ass, they would still suck on them because they are that infantile. Epigenetics is a cover for vaccine damage. Just like in the autism assault, see my video, Autism, you can turn genes on or off to try to make the damage less noticeable, but the genes are still there. Unless you excise them and restore the original code. Yet again, internet gurus say that is possible, but I've never seen it other than love and light co-creating a self-hypnosis with no clinical confirmation that the genome of an entire being has been rewritten. Then there is no cure. There is no healing. Reversal, maybe. You can drive your car 100 miles per hour down the freeway, and just before you collide with something, you can throw the transmission into reverse. It doesn't discount that you're still going to have one hell of a wreck, but at least you reverse the damage. Toxoplasmosis in your brain driving you to drive 100 miles per hour in the first place, notwithstanding. We're approaching 2 hours into this, so have you noticed that for all the biological templates and all the popular idiot memes out there, that I have anticipated all of them because I already had a video covering each of those topics. Like I said, planetary-sized brain. Well, that, and I just can't stand assholes lost in fantasy hallucination. Good God, does this guy ever shut up and get to the payoff? Why should I? We have been assaulted with military-grade weapons, where people's physiology is not necessarily unique, but we have been damaged in unique ways. I do have strategies for addressing the kind of damage that we see from Viri in general, including herpes, but you really don't think that I would compile over 30 pages of texts and references on my own time at poverty level and then give it away to people who don't have enough sense to keep their pants or their mouths zipped, do you? That will always come with the price of a consult. But then I am here to spread more doom, So get out your antidepressants because nothing happens in a vacuum. Well, I do swear that dirt multiplies in mine when I put it in the closet. But regardless, I have been writing an epic called Homeopathic on the origin and practice of homeopathy that will revolutionize that nonsense. Concurrent with that, me and the hens had been diving into this dissection of herpes that I knew for a fact none of you have heard before, where a primary answer to this military plague would be homeopathy. Isn't it strange that every time I tried to send out an email that had an expose on herpes in it, that suddenly my mail was being returned to me by Google? Isn't it strange that in this incarnation of the Truman Show, that the military psyop agency called the FDA just declared homeopathy to be damned near illegal in the United Rapes of Sumeria? So I'm not going to tell you anything on the remediation of this beast, because if you don't have the guts to fight against pure evil manifesting as bugheads in government and stop it on its relentless erasure of anything sane down here in hell, then you could have the formula for immortality, but you wouldn't be able to fill it because they done closed the pharmacy in hell. Of course, immortality in hell is not such a smart idea. I won't tell you to buy some famous guru's pills or potions or electro devices. I won't tell you what works and what don't. I damn near gave you the keys to the kingdom. So why is it that in all of the world I have only about 20 regular contributors to working out their own salvation, while hundreds sit idly by waiting for us to work it out? Nope, no answers here. Not this time. Here's a perfect example of a non-answer that already existed 28 years ago. Inhibition of herpes simplex, rabies, rabies, and rubella viruses by lectins with different specificities. Research in Virology, Volume 146, Issue 3, May through June 1995, pages 211 through 215. Quote, a series of 11 lectins were investigated for their inhibiting activity towards herpes simplex type 1, rabies, and rubella viruses. Herpes simplex virus adsorption was inhibited by the Limulus polyphemus, LPA, Cannivalia ensiformis, Con-A, and wheat germ, WGA, agglutinins, whereas Bauhinia purpurea, BPA, and soybean agglutinins were more effective if present during viral replication. Rabies virus attachment to susceptible cells was prevented by LPA, and Narcissus, pseudo-Narcissus, NPA, agglutinin, whereas WGA and BPA were inhibitory at a later step. Tyrosine kinase inhibitor genistein is a soybean agglutinin. I don't think the genistein has a Jewish grandmother. It comes from soy, so as not to be confused with goy. Lectins we know from the blood-type diet bind to things, either as friend or foe. Friends of my email list have been educating me in the world of biochar. Although it is said that Roundup does not biodegrade, it seems if you provide a charcoal for it to bind to, it takes the poison out of active duty and gives it a reaction surface for bacteria to degrade it, contrary to popular belief. When first confronted with the idea that lectins in food can disable certain viruses, we are caught with the conundrum that just taking it out of action does not destroy it. But the thought rattled around in my head like that ball in a spray paint can. No, really, it really does sound like that. That if we provided lectins to disable the viruses, that they could then be parted out like a chop shop in the ghetto and get rid of the bastards. Bastardettes, too, have very practiced gender fluidity. In a similar fashion to biochar just giving a reactive surface to work from. If you aren't familiar with the care and feeding of sharks and crocs, they're rather clumsy animals, so the reason that both go into feeding frenzy is not because they are in competition, it can come to that, but rather a really sick form of cooperation. How do you get purchase on something that is floating in water unless your buddy is hanging onto it while you take a bite? Regardless of whether anyone went into space, or even if there is a space, one of my favorite stories was of a Gemini shot where the astronaut was on a tether but couldn't stabilize himself for like an hour floating around in nothing. Damn near killed himself, and the door couldn't be closed because the lifeline coming out of the cabin was in the way, and so the pilot couldn't ditch his buddy and then re-enter the atmosphere without burning up, if and you believe in that NASA stuff. So we need to hold the viri in place while nucleases tear them up like God's garbage men. But, my attentive viewers, if the nucleases are out of commission, then the whole project falls apart like the Gemini shot. The response to these kind of published revelations comes from government-sponsored Elders of Zion-handled college kids that waste money pretending to fix a problem that the government, under the direction of the elders, created in the first place. Only I teach these types of pattern recognition. If you think you're tired, I'm the one that spent a couple weeks putting this together, so pay attention. Receptor tyrosine kinase inhibitors that block replication of influenza A and other viruses. They always hold out novel new ideas that always require more study, but the mechanism of action is sabotage. All you have to do is read the title to know that this is a shill distraction. Well, you would know that if you had a planetary-sized brain and did this shit every day. These freaks are always blocking natural pathways of the body like enzymes, cytokines, or the receptor sites, just like SSRIs, that are needed for multitudes of other functions in the body in a lame attempt at slowing down but never clearing the threat from the system. At best, this would induce tolerance, détente with the virus that never goes away. All day long, they are developing vaccines that attack the human body's biophysics so that it will arrest cancer or some dread disease. Attacking the host so that the parasite lives on unchallenged. Because if you were paying attention, none of these things belong in us, and so a bloody war to the death should ensue, where the last one standing is the winner. Tolerance is never an option, except for the infection that drives these crazed hosts to do its bidding, to invent ever more insane fractal ways of making a vaccine to counter the effects of a vaccine that came from a vaccine. Blocking replication does not eliminate the virus from the system. False flag. And you wanted me to hand you answers on a silver platter. Mechanism of action of the soy isoflavin genistein, emerging role for its effects via transforming growth factor beta signaling pathways. The soy isoflavin genistein attenuates growth factor and cytokine-stimulated proliferation of both normal and cancer cells. Have I taught you how to read yet? They are saying, let us turn off key metabolic functions in your body to protect you from cancer. How does that help anything except the virus? Immune evasion strategies are thought to contribute to successful persistence of viruses in infected immunocompetent hosts, delaying elimination of the infected cell long enough to enable the virus to replicate. What? My God, I am tired. How about you? Exemplary in this context are herpes viruses, which are carried as persistent infections by the vast majority of adults. Immune evasion strategies have been identified for members of all three subfamilies. For example, herpes simplex virus, HSV, and alpha herpes virus, human cytomegalovirus, HCMV, a beta herpes virus, and Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, a gamma herpes virus. In the infected cell, herpes viruses use general evasive approaches, such as blocking the induction of programmed cell death and shutting down host protein synthesis. In addition, herpes viruses specifically perturb recognition by virus-specific T cells, among others. If you don't understand what you just read, then let me be the Virgil to your Dante and give you the guided tour through hell. A virus, we're told that they don't exist, so just ignore them, gets into a cell, then it shuts off the ability of that cell to die. Squeeze the fuck out of me, but isn't that the definition in every religion of being converted into a physical form by God in order to suffer the torments of Gehenna for eternity? Shutting down host protein synthesis is like the Greco-Roman legends of the damned who were confronted by food and drink that would flee from them when they got near it. Of course, if you have a demonic possession and you live forever in a state of starvation without the ability to send a chemical signal for someone to rescue you or give you a mercy killing, I don't see on a microscopic scale how this is any different from what we are living on a macroscopic scale. Isn't it the established mythos that a demon gets inside of a human and then it takes over its body for its own purposes? How is that any different from the intercellular obligate parasite co-opting the cellular machinery to replicate and spread? People still have a hard time with my work due to having been raised in total ignorance of the universe around them. The bulk of humanity are inculcated into role-playing like Dungeons and Dragons or the Bible. Did I just repeat myself? Where a tidy narrative is provided for you and you just memorize it and never deviate from the script or the illusion will fall apart. Unique in all the world, I have taken all of the established memes of the ancients and beat the holy shit out of them so that they fit neatly into the shape of modern biological science. I thought I did a damn good job until I was told that people just don't fucking get it. They think that I, like other asshole gurus on the internet, have simply come up with my own version of religion to replace the one that I intend to destroy utterly. They think that when I talk about a virus, it's some abstract concept like a mind virus or a concrete concept like a computer virus at best. They don't make the leap that the very essence and nature of a real fucking RNA or DNA virus that infects a human being is the literal, practical, biological equivalent of a demon possession. That's why I use the archaic terminology to cross people over from delusion into lab science. It ain't been working so well. So, for the record, My work was predicated on the fact that when I read the old Sumerian texts that had diseases with the names of demons and demons with the names of diseases, I knew that there was an equivalency encoded into the old books, and that we no longer had to talk about Captain Jeremiah and the Galactic Federation parked in the orbit around Saturn waiting with Jesus and Maitreya and Buddha to come back to Earth when mankind figured out how to ascend into the fifth dimension. Wasn't going to happen, because just like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, hey, see my Santa Claus trauma video? It rocks, man. None of those psyop myths exist. But all day long, and parallel to my screaming at folks to get back to biology for answers of how to rid existence of evil, are the freaks that believe in that nonsense, but then embrace with all the fervor of French-kissing Elvis the psyop that viruses don't exist. That's when I realized that the reason why no one could see my correspondences is because the very bug that I was outing was the thing that was putting the hypnotic veil over those it possessed. The reason why no one can see chemtrails is that it's terraforming for the bug. So if you could see the geoengineering, you might look into that topic and you might find out that it's lethal to humans, but not their parasite. Humanity is in need of an exorcism that Mimi, the Queen of Meme, and I modified into needing an excision of the genetic pollution that has been grafted into us by vaccines. There are other extremes of the tri-electic that say that God invented viruses, so they are either our friends or we have to learn to live with them. If I were a god, I would not have invented a virus or allowed it to exist. Yet it seems like viruses are God. Thank you, Abby Smith. I don't agree with everything Abby says, but that link has got to be the funniest, most poignant proposition ever made. So I guess we have to kill God to get out of hell.